everybody. Welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. I'm Nick Palavito. I'll be your moderator for today's program. And of course, today we're going to discuss a very important topic which deals with no labels. No labels is not going to have a candidate this year. So we're going to have to find out, hey, what's going on? Because I see that we're going to run into a lot of problems without having anybody addressing the taking the bull by the horns, which of course is the U.S. government debt, approaching 34, now going on to 35 trillion. We're adding 1 trillion every 100 days to the national debt, and everybody's asleep at the wheel today. Everybody's going to look at the sun like that's important as we go more and more into debt with no end in sight. So with that, we're going to bring in the person who wants to stop the clown show in Washington, D.C., the Honorable David M. Walker. One of the few people in the United States have sense and sensibility, the former Comptroller General of the United States of America. David, economics. Let's find out what's happening with no labels. Right now, I have no vote. I'm getting my digital nomad visa in Spain, so I'll watch from afar the U.S. turn into Argentina or Venezuela in the next 4 years. But I don't know what country you're going to, but
Well,
talk to us. What's going on?
It won't be Zimbabwe, and since we're talking about fiscal matters, here is my $100 trillion Zimbabwe bill, and I don't know what it's worth. Maybe it's worth $2 or something like that. Who knows? But in any event, let's talk. As you know, I'm one of the national co-founders of No Labels. I've been involved in the organization since 2010, and the organization's been around since then. It's done a lot of great work, in particular, the establishment of the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House, which is over 60 members of the House, half Democrat, half Republican, who try to work together across the aisle to get things passed. And they've been instrumental in avoiding, a shutdown because of the debt ceiling, or because of the failure to pass all the appropriations bills. They were instrumental in passing the infrastructure bill. They were instrumental in passing the CHIPS Act. And so No Labels has been involved from the congressional standpoint, not just the House through the Problem Solvers Caucus, but also on a bipartisan, bicameral fashion with regard to the Senate and the House. The bicameral group. So there are a small group of senators, both sides of the aisle, who are also partnering with the Problem Solvers Caucus to try to get things done in their body as well. But about 2 years ago, Nancy Jacobson, who is the CEO and the founder of No Labels, envisioned that 2024 was lining up to be a potential rematch between Biden and Trump. And knowing that that would be largely unacceptable to a supermajority of the American public, came up with the idea that maybe we ought to offer a third unity ticket option if that came to pass, and raised a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars, to do what was very challenging, and that is to be able to get on the ballot in all 50 states, so that if there was an opportunity to run a unity ticket option, by unity ticket I mean the top person for president and the vice president could not have the same political affiliation. So you could have a Republican and a Democrat, or you could have an independent, but they couldn't have the same political affiliation. And sure enough, her view came to pass. But as No Label said all along, that it would not run a unity ticket option unless there was a pathway to victory in the Electoral College. In other words, they were in it to win it, not to be a spoiler, not to just send a signal. And in the final analysis, contrary to some of the reporting out there, the reason that No Labels didn't go forward is not because there wasn't a qualified candidate that was willing to run, who had the courage, the credentials. We did have a qualified candidate who was willing to run. But really what it came down to was that the pathway to victory in the Electoral College was viewed to have evaporated, primarily because of the third candidacy of RFK Jr. At first, our view was that he was not going to qualify on very many states, and therefore he really wasn't going to be a factor. And as you also know, that you've got West and Stein also running. They have no prayer to win, but they could be a spoiler. Kennedy could be a spoiler too. But when Kennedy picked his vice presidential candidate, Shanahan, who's a young, attractive female, but more importantly, even though she's not qualified for the job, has nothing to do with her age or her gender. She's very wealthy, and therefore she brings money to the table that would help him to be able to get qualified for the ballot in a bunch of states, and that really changed the dynamics. So the question is now, what's No Labels going to do? Given the fact that it's not going to run a unity ticket in 2024. And the answer to that is severalfold. Number one, it's going to continue to support the Problem Solvers Caucus to try to get action on the Fiscal Commission Act, on the Defending Democracies and Borders Act. It's going to continue to try to get action on HCR 24, which brings light, hopefully heat and action in connection with the need for a constitutional fiscal responsibility amendment. So it's going to work with the problem solvers to try to get progress on those types of issues, and also with a bicameral group. It's going to work to try to get problem solvers reelected, and to also elect future problem solvers, including people like, former Governor Larry Hogan, who's running for the Senate, in Maryland. And what I advocate for, and I'm hoping is going to happen, in addition to the things that I've already mentioned, it's going hopefully to be able to conduct public education and engagement efforts in the swing states based upon the Common Sense Agenda, which is on their website, nolabels.org. And the top issues on the Common Sense Agenda are, number one, the economy, inflation, and fiscal responsibility. Number two, border security and immigration. Number three, America's role in the world, which includes our loss of influence and when and how we should use the military. And number four, increasing concerns about rule of law and crime in major cities. So, I'm hopeful that they're going to be engaging on that, because frankly, the candidates aren't. They are not engaging enough on the issues. It's important that be done. If we had run a ticket, it would have been an issue-oriented, solutions-based campaign. It would have focused not only on the swing states, but disproportionately on the swing states, as the major candidates are, because that's going to decide the election. And so that's where things are. So in summary, it wasn't because there wasn't anybody willing to run, contrary to public reporting, but it was because we felt that the pathway to victory in the Electoral College had evaporated. But there's also a lot of people involved in the No Labels effort that would like to form a third party. They believe the time has come for a third major party, which exists in many other democracies around the world. And I think that's a possibility, but I don't see that happening during 2024, at least not before the election. And that's something that's yet to be determined. So those are the facts. That's the ground truth. And I'm happy to talk more about it. And then we can talk about some other issues, like the president's effort to once again engage in unconstitutional forgiveness of student debt. But, let's talk about this a little bit more.
Well, first thing, I attended a talk yesterday at our church, and they talked about words matter, which are pretty important. And when I saw No Labels, my thinking is that the name needs to change, because no is a negative word, no matter how you look at it. It should be the American Party, Positive America. I don't care.
Yeah,
but
right.
You really need to look at changing that name, because you're starting off with a negative word. No, it's like stop, or having read somewhere. You got to change the name. Maybe, like I said,
if there's a party, I totally agree with you. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a movement. Okay.
Right.
Purpose of the movement, it's fine, but for purpose of naming a political party, it's not. I agree.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the thing is also, you're looking to address the issues, which neither candidate is looking to address the issues, and which just bothers the bejeevers out of me. Economy, to me is very important because I like to live good. I don't like to live like trash. Okay. And so keeping a strong economy is very important, but I don't see the federal government going that direction. And so I go, well, I'm looking to change my money into euros because they're required to balance their budget over there. And over here, they're not. Border security, poor. I go to another country, they want a 500,000. New Zealand right now, 15 million to immigrate. The United States, hey, come on in. It's free. Okay. What country does that? Nobody does. It's just stupid. America and the world, we're going to bring that in right now because we have in behind Sasha Starr, who is getting boxed in by the Russians as we speak, and also Rick Rosner. So we're going to look at America's influence. He's actually has some practical experience with that going right now. And of course, the rule of law, we need to address civil and criminal procedures, but we'll bring in Sasha and Rick Rosner. I know Rick has his hand up, and Sasha will be talking about his experience with the Russians as we talk right now. But Rick, you have your hand up.
All right. We've established that neither Trump nor Biden is focused on balancing the budget. And with Trump, you have revenue shortfalls via tax cuts, largely going to super rich people. With Biden, you have standard, Democratic spending a ton of money beyond what the U.S. brings in. I would argue, as a liberal, and I welcome people who are more conservative to argue the opposite, that given the choice between two candidates who are bad on balancing the budget, that Biden is better because he gives us a better chance of recouping through growth some of the shortfall, because like our current technological superiority is because we spent a ton of money on math and science education in the 60s and 70s. And, with Trump, his factions are anti-public education, some of them, and anti-science, some of them. I think that, at least Biden offers us a chance to grow out of some of our budget problems.
Okay. Sasha, you have some thoughts.
To tell the truth, it's a very disappointing discussion because all of us have perhaps different means of influencing the budget, but we have no real power even to affect it to somewhat degree, whether it's Republicans will prevail with their budget or Democrats with their version of the budget. It's in a whole, any way you look at it. Practically speaking, I don't see the difference whether there will be additional, say, $1 trillion worth of new debt, or there will be only $500 billion, or no additional debt at all. Practically, for every person living in America, there is no difference. Now, speaking about immigration, I think the idea of immigrants paying some money that would go into some kind of a fund that will distribute this money to all Americans makes a lot of sense to me. And even if someone has difficulties to pay $100,000, so he can pay $10,000 and go into debt similar to student's loan, which he must pay during certain period of time. It could be 5, 10, even 20 years. It doesn't matter. But this will be the receivable of kind of high quality receivable on the books.
Mm-hmm.
So that will definitely make America not great again, but financially do quite well. And if it will be distributed among all Americans, similar like a sovereign fund in Norway, that each Norwegian at the end of the year is getting well over $1,000 from that fund, real money. So same thing could be set up and work in America. It's not going to be $1,000 for each American. Maybe it will be only $100, $150, but still, why not? for some
Well,
people.
you know, Sasha, you say that, but they actually have in Alaska trust fund for the
Mhm.
oil industry, and people get about $2,000 a year in
Wonderful.
Alaska will be off that. Now, we could even go on further because I liked your idea of the immigration dividend to the American citizens, which is a good idea. But we can do also whistleblowers. In other words, we have 15 million illegal immigrants. Whistleblow on them. Now, in my personal case, my ancestors came here in 1650 as an indentured servant. And he spent 7 years in the ironworks. He was a descendant of Edward II, a direct descendant of Edward II, King of England, and also, believe it or not, because of intermarriage, the King of Portugal, the King of Castile and Leon of Spain. I mean, I was complete royalty, but they lost. They lost the Battle of Dunbar. And when you lose as a royal, you get kicked to British America. And he came as an indentured servant. Okay, so they have to pony up 10 grand at least to be here in the United States of America because they use our services. And I'll tell you, going overseas, one of the biggest hesitance I have, people complain about American taxes. The taxes in Spain are pretty high, but that's to support their social services. So, you know, I don't get why America has such a free lunch for immigrants. We need to change that policy. Right now, when I look at both parties, neither have a policy, but go on, Rick.
I just wanted to mention the US does have a golden visa. It's called the EB-5 visa. And to get this visa, you must invest at least $800,000 in a US enterprise and create at least 10 American jobs. So we have that thing. It's just that a lot of other people get in, other
Free.
ways.
Yeah, you don't get them free. Yeah, David.
Let me jump.
Other European countries have people getting in for free too. Every country has, it's not just people who pay the country's money to get in.
It's one thing to have people that come in because of political asylum, which is what asylum is supposed to be. It's another thing to have people to come in who don't have a legitimate claim. 85 to 90% of the people, and this is according to the Department of Homeland Security, who are crossing our border illegally in the United States do not have a credible claim for asylum. The truth is, the president is not enforcing current law. Current law says that you have to detain and or return people who come to this country illegally. Catch and release is blatantly illegal. And it is also costing not just the federal government, it's costing state and local governments a huge amount of money. We clearly need immigration reform. A couple of things. We clearly need immigration reform, but you got to get border security first. You're not going to get immigration reform until you get border security. And there's no confidence in this president's ability to enforce border security because he's already violating the law. Secondly, the last president who was fiscally responsible was Bill Clinton. Nobody has been fiscally responsible since then. And I might note that Biden is definitely not fiscally responsible. He followed the modern monetary theory the first 2 years of his presidency when he had control of both the House and the Senate. That was a disaster. It led to excess inflation, among other things. He's wanting to give away student loans or forgive student loans, which the Supreme Court has already said is unconstitutional. It's irresponsible. It's unethical. It's unconstitutional. It's nothing more than trying to buy votes. And those kinds of activities just can't be allowed to happen. Look, I'm all for the concept of a dividend or a surcharge, but you got to keep in mind, we're in the hole. You don't distribute money when you're in the hole. What I've proposed is let's set debt to GDP targets that are enforceable targets. And by the way, that's what Europe's based on. It's based on you can't have a deficit of more than 3%. So you don't have to have a balanced budget. You can't have a deficit of more than 3% of GDP. You're not supposed to have debt to GDP of over 60. We're violating both, blatantly violating both. But if we had debt to GDP targets. If you did better, you could give a dividend. If you did worse, you'd have a surcharge. And then all of a sudden, every American would see on their tax return whether people were doing a good job or a bad job with regard to our nation's finances. Right now, they don't see it. They don't feel it. It's their kids and grandkids that are going to see it and going to feel it, which is unethical and immoral. And so, we need to focus on the facts. The fact is there's nobody responsible here. And that's one of the big reasons why we wanted to run a third option and why we want to focus on issues and solutions, because the other two candidates, at least to date, aren't.
Yeah, Rick, then Jacoby.
I have a twist on, Nick, your system of charging people to come in. Charge people to come in, but then turn that money around and pay other people to stay home and get educated. That give grants to, Dave said that 85 to 90% of the people trying to come to the U.S. aren't coming because for true asylum reasons. They're coming to economic opportunity. Well, let's maybe give people that opportunity if they bring us skills. If you come to us with an AA degree or better in a STEM field, and you agree to, work in some that increases your chances of getting into the U.S., that we get skilled immigrants. And we could sponsor that by, if we're charging some people to come to the U.S., turn that money around and, pay some grant applicants in Venezuela to stay in Venezuela, get educated, fortify their homes if gang violence is one of the problems that they're facing. And so
Jacoby, you're on mute.
You're on mute. We got to hear you.
We have to stop the fallacy that people are not paying to come to the U.S. There is an immigration fee that people actually pay. Asylum fees and everything else, yes, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen anywhere because people are already impoverished coming to that place where they're going to. So there is an actual immigration fee that people actually pay.
It's insecure. And they're also paying the cartels to be able to get across the border. And they're paying the cartels a hell of a lot more money than the immigration fee you're talking about.
Okay, that doesn't matter. That's a moot point. The reason it's a moot point is because you're saying that they are paying these other people to come here and they're not paying us. Well, we're not giving them the opportunity. So that makes it a moot point, that pointing out to the cartels that they're paying these people. So our job should be to take out the cartels, and it will be the individuals that actually take care of these individuals rather than the cartels. So then we would be spending more money or actually giving them an actual service so they could pay that rather than pay the cartels. In terms of the immigration, catch and release, yes, we're all against catch and release, but you cannot do anything if you don't have the facilities or actually the resources to take care of the individuals that come into the country. So therefore, we have to put money into the immigration system where we have actual facilities to take on the individuals that come through asylum. Therefore, we're going to have to spend money on immigration. On top of that, we need to take care of the individuals through the legal means, because a lot of the individuals that get stuck in Mexico or stuck in the places that they're coming from have been stuck there for years on top of years. So the line keeps building. And until we actually add lawyers and judges to actually do the legal work and put that forth, we are going to be stuck in the situation, no matter who the president is. And there was a spike under Trump, and Trump tried to actually do this executive order to stop individuals from coming through, but that got blocked by the judges. So it wasn't that fact that he could just up and do that. And then what came in to be, because in 2019 was when that spike was, and that's when everybody started going to the news yelling caravans of migrants. And that was to demonize the individuals that were coming through for asylum. And that's what we cannot do. And what ended up happening that actually stopped those caravans of migrants that were bringing drugs, that was actually COVID, because the whole world was shut down during that time. And there was nobody traveling during that time. So COVID shut that down. And then, yes, once everything got moving, yes, there's a giant spike. But again, we didn't have the money, the finances, or anything placed in the border. So yes, it was a fault of Biden not preparing for that, because really not too many changes from the border have happened in terms of policy wise, other than, hey, we're not going to separate families as much. The big problem again goes back to, this has been something that we've just kicked the can down the road on. Every administration past 20, 30 years, Rick points out continuously that the last immigration policy change that we've had was under Reagan, which is true. We haven't had any major change or shifts there. So we've got to actually invest money into the border if we're going to fix that immigration system.
Yeah. Okay. Let me jump in. First, it's not that complicated. Number one, you declare the cartels terrorist organizations. You tell Mexico, you either take care of the situation or we'll take care of the situation, right? Number
No,
two,
you can't do that.
oh, let me finish. I'll let you finish, Jacoby, okay?
Yeah, I apologize.
Number two, you have to secure the border. Number three, I have no problem providing housing and providing additional support for people who have a credible claim to asylum. That means that 85 to 90% go home. 85 to 90% go home, okay? You have a president who has flown 310,000 plus immigrants by plane into the United States, circumventing the border with no credible claim whatsoever, okay? So, yeah, we need additional funding. We need additional funding to be able to deal with people who have a credible claim. That's only 10 to 15%. We need additional funding to secure the border, okay? We need additional funding for judges who can deal with those ones with credible claim. But in the meantime, we got 7 million people here that we know of, and at least 1 million to 2 million people that we don't know of. That is a failure of current policy.
Just really quickly, David, I had two quick questions. One is based on something that somebody said, it might have been Jacoby, but aren't some fields, because it's a two-part question, but I thought some fields like medicine and law, that when they came here on some of these visas and everything, that they were required to, in some cases, to stay in the United States for a period of time. Not saying every case, but sometimes that was requirements of their getting their student visas in certain fields. I thought medicine and law were two of them. And the other thing that I've heard from people from Mexico, and I'd love to really hear your answer on this one and everything, is that we talk about the people coming off from Mexico and the cartel in Mexico, but I understand from quite a few of my friends that are of Latin American descent that a number of the people even coming from Mexico aren't coming from Mexico. They're coming from Ecuador, they're coming from Venezuela, they're coming from other countries, and they're using Mexico as almost like a way station. So we've actually got to have a better relationship with other countries as well, not just Mexico. But I was wondering your take on that, because when I'm hearing from
Correct. That's correct. A lot of the people that are coming through Mexico,
right,
but they're not Mexicans. That's absolutely true. Okay. And look, we ought to be looking at what other countries do on immigration. It's not just a matter of the economics, Nick, that you're talking about, but but most countries actually have a more intelligent immigration policy where they get this. This sounds out of the box for the U.S. They think about the macroeconomic needs of the country, and they form immigration policy based upon the economic needs of the country, which means that to the extent that people have education or skills or resources that could be a benefit to help grow the economy that would not be drawing upon our welfare system, then they are given a priority, while at the same point in time retaining the ability of people who face legitimate oppression, allowing them an opportunity to come in without some type of fee or whatever else. But that is a very small percentage of what we're dealing with right now, a very small percentage.
Yeah, Rick
I
and then
think that
Jacoby.
we can all agree that step one in immigration policy is controlling the border, but that's not going to happen in 2024 because of political strategizing and stalemate. I looked up the J1 visa because Mark said that and it actually works the opposite. Now, I'm sure there are various visas. We have a zillion different visas, but under the J1, you come here, to get medical training, go med school. And then you're required after getting your training to go back to your home country for at least 2 years to share your knowledge and skills with your home country.
That's ridiculous. They should have them here, but go on, Jatovi.
But just to point out, and this is another thing that we have to really avoid, because we tend to keep saying that immigrants are such a draw on our welfare system. When if you look at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, 64% of foreign-born individuals who've come to our country were employed in 2018. Only 54% of native-born were employed. Immigrants actually add they're going to add $7 trillion in terms of to our economy, and that's a plus. So we keep talking about them as they come over and they're just such a drain on our society when they have actually added a lot to our society. And to touch on what Mark talked about, a lot of them are overstaying their visas, and they're stuck because they're stuck in litigation, which gets us back to the whole point of Rick saying controlling the border. We need money to control that border. We need resources. We need lawyers to streamline the process, because we can't keep demonizing the individuals, because we don't know everybody that's here, but our first inclination being they're terrorists or bringing drugs, which is completely untrue, because we know for a fact that the majority of drugs come through actually ports of entry. So therefore, we cannot keep using the old adage that, oh, they're bringing all these drugs across, when it's not true.
We don't know.
Yep.
We don't know. We don't know of 1 million to 2 million people who are gotaways in the last 3 years. We don't know anything about them at all. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. We don't know what they brought with them. We just don't know.
But we know a fact that immigrants commit less crimes than native-born Americans. So we cannot even go off we don't know. We do know for a fact that they're not committing crimes.
But you'll need to put that data in the chat, because it's easy to make assertions, and
I can put it right here. I'll bring up
the Center for Budget Policy Priorities, and they're a far left group. So go ahead.
No.
Yeah, they are. I know them. I know the head of it.
So we need immigrants. We're only making 80% as many babies as we need to maintain a stable population. But if we had a controlled border, we could let in the people we like, people who bring skills, people who would do jobs that Americans don't want to do. In the 40s and 50s, we had the Bracero program, which temporarily brought over Mexican agricultural workers. And we've got this demographic bump where boomers are getting old and need care, and we don't have enough native born people to take care of all the old people. And so we could have programs where you agree to work in nursing homes for 2 or 3 years when you come over. If we had a controlled border, we could come up with a zillion programs that would benefit the U.S. via selective immigration.
I want their money whether or not they are coming here for asylum and they're not, because people need to have skin in the game. Somebody goes, well, I'm here to get asylum because my country sucks. They get to pay $10,000 too. I'm sorry. And the reason why,
or you have a wiping old people's asses visa. You agree to wipe 80-year-old people's butts for 2 years,
they got to have skin in the game, baby. If I've been in business 40 years and I've seen this, well, I don't want to put anything in. When you don't have skin in the game isn't ever played very well. You put your 10 grand in, good for you. Okay, now you have skin in the game. None of this. Let's hire 20 attorneys and 500 judges and law firms and appellates. Forget that. They just write the bloody check. If they don't, Put it on their U.S. government credit card, like student debt.
Three
No
quick
free
things.
lunch, baby.
Three
No
quick
debt.
things. You're actually adding more to the debt because you're actually asking for immigrants who have absolutely no money coming across for asylum to actually take out a loan that would have to be backed by the federal government.
They're in debt,
That
not
they
us.
most likely would not be able to pay back. So therefore, you're adding more to the deficit. So that's a bad idea.
No.
Number two,
It has nothing to do with the deficit.
You
It
do,
has nothing to do with the deficit.
Let me finish.
No, it has nothing to do with the deficit.
Personal
It has to
debt.
do-
Personal
It's
debt.
an asset like
You
student
guys
loans.
asked me to let you finish, and then you're going to interrupt
Okay,
me.
go on.
So, to point out, it does deal with the deficit. People take out student loans, that goes to the deficit. People take out housing loans,
You
that
don't
goes to the
understand
deficit.
accounting, Jacoby.
You're interrupting me again, Dave.
Yeah, but you don't understand accounting.
Dave, let me finish then, and then you correct me.
Okay.
So, number one, that means that loan will have to be paid back by somebody. And that loan will get paid back just like we are affected by everybody who goes to the emergency room and does not pay. That bumps up our insurance. So we have to deal with the loan that is not going to be paid back by the millions of people that you want to charge $10,000 to. That's got to be backed by somebody. So correct me again, Dave. So number two, I just shared with you an actual NPR article that took the Cato Institute, which is actually a very, very conservative actual public. What?
Libertarian.
That's still conservative publication.
Yeah, that's all right.
So again, the Cato Institute even talks about that foreign-born or undocumented workers are 37.1% less likely to commit a crime than native-born Americans. And that was a study done in Texas. And then they actually went to Stanford University and did one where it did from the year of from 1969 all the way up to the 2000s, and pointed out how immigrants were 60 some odd percent less likely to commit crimes compared to native-born Americans. So again, we have to stop the idea and demonization of the immigrant population. So
First,
getting back to the point,
we didn't have. Look, you said three things. You've said them.
I only said two, Dave.
Well, don't do a filibuster, Jacoby.
I'm not doing a filibuster.
You're taking
Not
too
doing a
long.
filibuster.
Okay.
I'm just getting in the three things.
We're also factually wrong. Okay.
I'm not. I just gave you the actual facts.
All right. Hold on. Two things. Number one, our problem wasn't 1969 to 2000. Get real. We didn't have this problem.
Okay. Well, Texas is not 2019.
Whoa.
You just interrupted me to correct me when
I'm getting off this if I continue to hear this. All right. Number two, you don't understand accounting. A student loan to the federal government is an asset. The interest on the student loans to the federal government is income. The attempt of the president to forgive student loans is giving away an asset of the federal government. The attempt to be able to freeze interest payments is giving away income from the federal government. It's blatantly illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's inequitable. Secondly, if individuals, by the way, I appreciate very much you putting a couple of things in the chat. One of the things you put in the chat is that people have to pay $220 for a fee to come here. Boy, that's really going to help us a lot. It's going to help us a lot. Secondly, if people have to take a private loan, that has nothing to do with the federal government. The federal government's not going to guarantee those loans. That's something that they have to do, and they'll have to get financing for it. By the way, they're paying a hell of a lot more money to the drug cartels to come across the border than $220. Those are facts.
Hey, Dave, just really quickly before Jacoby jumps back in, but I'm confused about something here and everything. I just want some clarity because I thought that some of the asylums from some of the countries were economic asylums. So if you're coming from a poor country, so you're already broke. So how are they supposed to get the money, or are they supposed to get a loan and everything? Because I do know that some of the people are coming from some significantly poor countries. So I don't know that they can afford the $3,000.
They're not eligible for immigration. They're not eligible for asylum.
Well, I think, and this is Steve Rao. Good morning, everybody. It's always great to see you. Go Pack. Had to wear my NC State swag just one more time. Keep the dream alive. But real quickly, I just want to make one point. I mean, there has always been recently a real confusion between asylum and immigration. I think that's one of the problems that we have. We have to remember that asylum was granted during World War II, after World War II, for very limited, particularly for many Jewish people to come to different areas of the world where they have been, tortured and persecuted, and since that time, you have to have a very specific reason of why you're seeking asylum. Now, situations can be really bad in these countries, but they're not doing that. They haven't sought asylum, and they're not complying with immigration laws. And I think it's very important for us to understand that immigration is a legal process. Immigration is a legal process, like what my parents went through, or 35% of our population in my town, Morrisville, is from India. They go through the process to get an H-1B, to get a green card, and they come here legally. Now, things might have been bad in India in the 1960s, and they were bad. But my dad couldn't just come over here on a boat and enter in America to become a surgeon. He had to go through the laws. So I think it's also really important that we understand this. Now, do immigrants provide economic benefit? Yes. Could there be ways where we bring in people for work permits and do it the right way? Yes. We're not saying, I don't think, that we don't want it. What we are saying, and David, I just wanted to throw that in there, that I think that's kind of the thing, is we've got to come together to figure out, and maybe No Labels can have a stance on this, on immigration, is, how do we bring people together? But, and why are people wanting to come to America so much? Why are things so bad in these countries?
No Labels does have, this is one of the issues in the Common Sense Agenda, which is at nolabels.org. And
Okay.
it's a combination of border security and immigration reform, both. And
Okay.
you're right. We want immigration. We only have 1.64 births for every woman in the United States. And the
Right.
only way that we're going to grow is through immigration. But we have to have a rational policy with regard to immigration, and we don't now.
Hey, just really quickly, and I know I might be pivoting the conversation slightly and everything, but I had the pleasure of watching a movie that dealt with unions and everything. And ironically, it was led by a lot of people that were in the space of being immigrants, because apparently a number of women and gentlemen that were working for Amazon, and that was what the movie was about. It was Amazon being unionized, were coming from other countries, and they wanted to get unionized. And I think they got unionized in at least one city, even though they were voted down in others. So I was just wondering No Labels' position on unions, because there is a tie between immigrations and unions. And like I said, this movie that I was watching was based on what was going on with Amazon. But I was just wondering your take on unions, and particularly how it ties to immigration, because I do think a number of times the workers are those from Latin American and other countries that are trying to get unionized.
I do not recall there being anything in the Common Sense Agenda, which includes 30 items, that deal directly with the issue of unionization, for or against unionization.
Okay. That's fair enough. I was just wondering, because like I said, I didn't know it was an immigration-based conversation based on the movie that I saw.
One thing that would help with immigration and also drug deaths is coming up with policies that would squeeze the cartels. Right now, the cartels have two main businesses: drugs and moving humans up to our border, which includes human trafficking. And, before there was the war on drugs, we didn't have the cartels. And if we could change we need changes in policies, especially now with fentanyl contaminating all these illicit drugs, making them super deadly. If we could, but it's going to be tough to change. Well, it's tough to change any policies right now because we're politically paralyzed. But it's especially tough to change drug policies, because then it looks like you're soft on drugs and crime. But really, we should have sources of safe drugs that have been tested that won't kill you.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, some drugs are legal in many states. I mean, depends on what the drug is. Yeah.
Right.
Well, David, let's get to American influence. I want to bring in Sasha Starr, because he found something very interesting, and I confirmed it. Since there's a chess tournament, it's a big one. It's basically you're playing for the World Championship up in Canada. And there's an organization called FIDE, which is the International Chess Organization. But it appears to be, this is one of possibly many that have been infiltrated by the Russians. Sasha, can you give us an experience with dealing with your former comrades up at, now they're in Canada with a bunch of Russians up there. What's your thoughts on that, Sasha?
Nick, it's not infiltrated. It's managed and run openly by former KGB people, Russian oligarchs, and there is no mystery about it. It's all up in the open sources, and you've verified some of this information. And the atrocity is that they are acting from the position of power, where they really do anything what they want, disregarding any established policies of Canada, North American society as a whole. For example, even the fact that they announced that they are willing to provide press passes, and POT TV duly provided all information, forums, pictures, or so on. There was no reply even, although they're violating now their own policy, because if Unique will go on their side, they're saying that absolutely all inquiries would be answered. So they're breaking their own policy. What they're saying that FIDE is so big that POT TV could be lawfully just ignored. They don't need to reply, although they're saying otherwise on their side. Now, they organized this tournament in old, probably 100 years old structure, which was absolutely dysfunctional until recently. And there is no access to people with the physical inabilities. So that actually eliminates a lot of people who otherwise could see and watch this tournament. Furthermore, they're selling tickets. It's very expensive tickets. They're selling, for example, pass for all games cost $2,400. So if you're saying now what's, for example, position of Canadian Chess Federation would be that we have this great tournament to popularize chess. So how you popularize chess, which the hall where they're playing is not accessible, and when tickets cost up to $2,400, how you promote chess really? Absolutely, it's a highly elitist, closed environment tournament, which FIDE put just for themselves, their people, and they're doing anything to discourage people, press, to actually visit and report on the tournament. I couldn't find, even 2 weeks before tournament was announced, I couldn't find any information, even the address where it's going to be held, the hotel where they have their press conference and opening ceremony. Absolutely nothing. They keep hiding this information, although it's a public event sponsored, by the way, Canadian taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
And by the way, happy solar eclipse to everybody.
When organized crime takes over a government, it becomes extremely effective. The Nazis were a criminal enterprise that had the resources of an entire nation. Ditto for today's Russian government. It's organized crime that has access to tens of billions of dollars to spend on criminal stuff. So, like buying all the chess organizations, it's a pittance for a government that's criminal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, if they take over chess, which is a benign organization, how many other organizations have the Russians infiltrated and basically have taken over? Could it be the United Nations? I mean, who knows?
The NRA, they infiltrated, they were running the NRA via
the NRA is a good question. In other words,
and
the Russian government money and Russian influence cannot be denied. I mean, the thing is, they're over here right now, and they just took over and I checked through all the websites, and I was going, it's only them and their allies have total control over the International Chess Organization. Like I said, that's benign. But how many other organizations have Russia? And this goes back to what David says, America in the world. Well, it looks like we're losing our influence even to the Russians as we sit right now.
Hey, but Nick, not only that, and I'd love to hear David's thoughts on this and everything, because I had read a report that there is concern, I think, from both the right and the left, that Chinese influences may be impacting the election as well. So I was just wondering if you had heard anything along those lines and your thoughts around that, because I did hear a report about that as recently as last week and everything. But David, any thoughts on this notion?
That's true, and Chinese investors own the largest movie chain in the United States called AMC Theaters.
Really?
And
Okay, I did not know that.
And they do have influence
Yeah, a lot of them are going out of business.
in how it's and when.
The practical effect of that is that if you're going to have a bad guy in a movie, it has to be from a country that's not China, because then you can't sell your movie to China. We did the same thing in the late 30s, early 40s, where we couldn't have Nazi villains in our movies because then we couldn't sell the movies to Nazi Germany.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we're going to see more and more of that, maybe even in the election. How much of this election is going to be influenced by foreign dark money going through corporations? Right now, in the corporations, there's a Corporate Transparency Act that you have to identify the ultimate beneficiary. Well, unfortunately, one of the circuit courts just overturned it. So now all of a sudden it's in limbo. Do you need to identify who actually owns the company? So it's really simple. I set up a company for David's friend who's in China. It's called China Influence Incorporation. But no one knows the ultimate beneficial owners are a bunch of Russians. They have no idea because right now there's no transparency. And because of Citizens United, they turn around and donate a bunch of money to Biden or Trump. And now all of a sudden your elections are being funded by overseas money. They call it dark money. But frankly, under our current laws, it's the easiest thing in the world to do. Set up an American company. And they, by the way, they did that, Sasha, in your chess thing. It was an American company purportedly being in financial planning. I've never heard of it. I've been in financial work for 40 years. Freedom Financial, right? It's an American company all owned by Russians. Okay.
Nick,
so all you have to do is set up a front, a corporation, issue shares to your Chinese or your Russian people. Then under Citizens United, donate $100 million to Trump or to Biden, whoever you want to buy. And the money's there. And there's unfortunately no way to stop it. And you won't even know it's being done because this Corporate Transparency Act doesn't, it is struck down by the, I think it was the 11th Circuit who struck it down. If it stands in front of the Supreme Court, you will never know, ever know who bought the U.S. president.
But Nick, isn't that the oldest trick in the book though? Because I can tell you, and I'm serious until we can even back me on this, that there were a number of folks, particularly if you want to go down the race path. And I know that we don't often do that here on this network, but we do sometimes. But there were a number of companies that would put up a front person because they were not getting the loans that they wanted to get if they were minority owned. So they might put up somebody,
right?
Like I might
front.
Put up Sasha or Rick because they were not going to get the money that I wanted to get from those said institutions. So I might have to put up somebody that looks like me in order to get the loan.
Because of the way the law is, assuming the corporate transparency is struck down, the way the law works right now, you can hide behind your corporation, the shares. No one knows who your ownership is. By the way, go check the annual reports. You never have to file who your shareholders are. And I'm talking about private companies. So all of a sudden, you fund it all with money and you buy the election. Yeah, David.
That's why you need a constitutional amendment to deal with campaign finance. It's the only way you're going to get it. All right. I'll give you a novel idea. The only people that can contribute to political campaigns are people who can vote. Newsflash. Corporations and unions can't vote. All right. Their employees can, their shareholders can, their members can, but they as entities can't. You should treat, yes, they might be a person for certain legal purposes, but they should not be a person for purposes of political campaign financing.
Right. Right now, I hate to say it, it's really too easy. It's really too easy to have the Russians or the Chinese or the Indians.
Anyone.
It doesn't matter. Buy the election. It's too easy.
So Mark said that this is the oldest trick in the book. And yeah, it is, but it's been turbocharged by Citizens United and social media. I wrote for a bunch of prank shows where we'd have writers' rooms where we'd come up with ways to mess with people, and those were
See
great
everybody.
jobs because you'd come up with an idea and you'd laugh. And there's a building in St. Petersburg that they must have the most fun at work because they spend all day coming up with BS, fake social media posts that will make people crazy in Western democracies. And I know in this office in Russia, they're laughing all day because they're coming up with BS that will destabilize democracies. And it only costs Putin $30 million a year. It's such a bargain. It's like $1 for every brain you make crazy in the West.
Yeah, Jacoby.
Wouldn't it be sad if we had one of our choices in legal trouble who needed money, and not only money to pay the legal fees as well as money to campaign on, and needed big money to do both? Wouldn't it be bad if we had one of those candidates like that?
It's quite possible you do right now. Actually, Letitia, James is looking into that because apparently the way the insurance companies funded that posted the bond for this particular individual may be funded all with dark money from Russia. But guess what? His whole campaign could be through a corporation in Citizens United funded by Russia, China, or Iran. It doesn't matter because there's no disclosure of the ultimate beneficial owner in a closely held private company. Now, if you're a public company, that's different because you have to actually disclose your top ownership. But in a private company, you don't. They passed the Corporate Transparency Act. Right now, it's in limbo. And we, right now, as we're sitting today, because it's in limbo, we have a major problem on our hand. This could be the first U.S. president who's bought by foreign entities. But yeah, Sasha.
I think there could be even more danger of not foreign entity, but domestic entity, because there is enough information already about this company headed by Hanke. And what is this individual doing? They're repossessing hundreds of cars a day, providing subprime financing for these cars, including cars owned by military personnel of the United States. They're repossessing these cars just as well. He could not provide any financial information as required by law. And therefore, all this $175 so-called bond is now being verified, looked at it, and I wouldn't be surprised if Trump will have to provide all amount in about due time, and forget about this horrible, what's his name, Hanke company.
Yep. And with that, we're going to have to go because we're out of time.
South Park.
Don't
Mr.
forget
Hank.
We want to thank the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, and our panelists to find out what's going on with no labels. Hopefully something will happen between now and election time that's positive. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.